says this is who you are in society. This is the kind of inspired or uninspired leader you will be. This is where you begin to make decisions that hold you back or propel you. I got all the way here because I made decisions based on what my family wanted for me. I'm 25 years old. I'm depressed out of my mind. So I take all this money, I go spend it. Nothing happens. I go take all this money and I drink. And I buy everybody drinks. Nothing happens. I get into doing drugs. Nothing happens. What happens is I push and I push and I push until I burn out. Until I find myself on that very same bridge. 1, 2, yank. I get yanked back by that amazing curly hair of mine. That frizz that I hate that's wrapped up today saved my damn life. He yanked me out, and for the next year, I had to take a pause. And I had to regroup. 25 years old, asking myself, what do I want? 25, you're still pretty darn young. You're still wanting the improvement and approval of folks. You still got other issues you got to deal with, right? So what feelings are you chasing? You had them when you set your New Year's resolutions. I want to take my business to the next level. What does that mean? I'm sure you looked at those tactics, but are any of those tactics fueled from any regret or mistakes? Is it better off just to cut it off? So when I ask you what feelings are you chasing, that's what I'm talking about. It's not just, oh, the baggage I have from growing up or from being bullied. No. I'm asking you to understand that each and every one of you has a decision-making pattern that's been set. You are who you are. But you don't have to surrender to that. So this is when my personal brand saved my So here I am. I come over that year of being burned out, of dealing with depression, of understanding how I speak to myself and how that changes my decisions, my verbal voice. And I decide, you know what? I am smart enough and worth enough to invest in going to college. So at the age of 28 in 2006, I go back to college. And only in New York can you pivot from finance to fashion and it still makes sense. So I went back to fashion, but this time the business side. I wanted to understand, I was right there with these huge brands and $1 million budgets. How are they bringing them to life? So I went to a college in 2006 at orientation. I was given a business card with my name on it. And they introduced me for the first time to the concept of personal branding. I didn't give a shit about this business card. I had my first business at the age of 13 and I made my own, right? What I cared about is the idea that I could treat myself as a brand. Now, they said this to us because I'm 28 as a student, but most of my counterparts are 18 and was really excited about being in Manhattan as their college campus, and we're going to go out, and this is the same time that social media is coming up. So they were worried about, what are you going to put on MySpace? Literally, they told us, don't be double-fisted, no Daisy Dukes, because I had a lot of girls in the college. So that's what they talked to us about. At the age of 28, I found it really fascinating, and I'm a writer. So I began to write thought leadership. This is today's LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, keep going and on and on and on. So my circle of friends said, Sahar, why are you getting so deep on MySpace, girl? Can you just post your favorite song and keep it going? No, I couldn't. Because I was 28 years old in the world of fashion, and I took my college career seriously. I entered at the top, right underneath the top. And I got to be in circles that I wouldn't have normally seen as a woman, straight up. Because the one thing about fashion and finance, the guys at the top look the same. So it was incredible for me to be in those offices. And I wrote about that. And I worked my tush off. And for those solid 2 years, I went, at the age of 30, I graduated. And I had my dream job promised to me. August 2008, the day before I was supposed to start at Iconics, I get a call from Kimberly, my manager. And the first thing I hear is, what's up, Kim? Hey, Sahar, listen, I'm sorry, your position, it's been dissolved. 2008, the economy crashes, and so here I am. So after I wiped up my ego and put my resume back out there and wasn't having any luck, I went into the freelancers world. And I went back to this other circle of people that weren't making fun of my MySpace blogs. Those were the people at the Cooper Hewitt Museum. There were people at fellow universities. So that's when I began to leverage my personal brand. Can I come in to guest lecture? Guest lectures turned into presentations. Presentations turned into paid workshops every month at museums. Endless supplies. Workshops turned into a nonprofit. 4 years. I partnered with Brooklyn high schools where I took the business to fashion programs. I wrote an entire curriculum. We went over the bridge into Dior. They got to interview those folks and know that they belong there, and they got school credit. And I did that for 4 years. And here we are at the age of 33. I'm reaching a decade in New York. I'm exhausted. And, you know, when I went back to college, I was like, okay, all those messages of like, you're dumb and all that, I knew I wasn't because I got that Citibank job. So we got rid of that baggage real quick. But then it was, oh, I want to help the people that were in my position, those other people that are being marginalized and being told, you're not worthwhile for society. So that's what the nonprofit was. But again, the feelings that I was chasing through the nonprofit was to heal my voice being marginalized. And I helped so many. I have a mentee that now has a PR firm, and Solange is his top client. Doing better than me. Okay, Sean, can I borrow some money? Can I get that scholarship back? It was great. But fashion felt fickle, because at the end of that, they were going back to their same problems. So I left New York after a decade. I came here to Houston. I holed up in Cyprus and wrote a book called Find Your Voice, which is a course in emotional intelligence, so we can chase the right feelings. And it brought me here. Because I mentor a woman who used her voice to champion mine and reached out to Elizabeth. And Elizabeth had one of the toughest interviews I've ever had as a professional speaker. When I came here and wrote Find Your Voice, I went to speak. Mom and pop shops, Barnes & Noble, Facebook, HBO, Whole Foods. And Elizabeth gave me one of the hardest interviews to make sure that I was coming here to be clear with you, that I was going to be forthright with all that happened. So I just bulleted, hey, I did workshops and presentations and then a nonprofit. I want to talk to you that I was living under the poverty line for over a decade doing all of that. Once I began to get into the speaking into the bigger corporate arenas, even then, a lot of speakers will speak for free. So if you are looking at that, sir, as a Christian, you can charge. Your voice has value, especially what you're doing. So there was a lot of times where I was changing lives. I had big brands alongside my personal brand, but the pocketbook was empty. And that's when I really had to make that big shift. And that was understanding two things. One, I want to save and change the world. It's always been a big part of who I am. You could go back to the 8-year-old girl with the veterinary clinic. But also, I have a business savvy, and I'm finally in line with my worth. And that's when Own Your Voice Strategy Firm came about. And for me, it was knowing once I was on the road, like, I have so many ideas and solutions, but damn it, I can't change the world by myself. Lovelace, your voice is going to land much better with someone than mine will. And that's why I want to get behind other social conscious leaders to scale their voice. I've worked for a lot of bad leaders. I had a lot of bad leaders' voices infiltrate my own home to tell me I'm dumb. So that's why our paths cross. So what can you learn about my story and apply it to yours? Because this is a teacher. Remember your roots. We talked about that. 2020, clear vision, yada da 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 da. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to your roots. And even if your upbringing was tumultuous or nothing great, what were those moments that really say who you are? She said, I remember when I was in college and I loved being a student. I want to learn how to play a cello again. This year, I'm going to be a student. That's really hard to say because we're in a culture that's like, you better go, and you don't get any time off until you're exhausted, right? So how can you take that perspective? How can you go into the perspective of your roots and that thing that brings you back that little bit of energy every day? Elizabeth, yes, you have a printing business, but I've never seen you come more alive until you started putting your quotes on your shirts. I bought one of her jackets that says, own your story, right on the back. You know, like you tapped back into that childhood. You tapped back into that moment that silenced you, and now you wear it loud on your shirts and allow us to do it too. So go back to your roots. Go back to your roots and chase the right feelings. So look at your 2020 resolution and what motivated them. What emotions motivated them? What are you chasing? To feel acknowledged, accomplished, to level up, to be loved, to feel renewed? And check those feelings that you're chasing. And make sure that they're pushing you in that right direction. So, Find Your Voice came out. The book, my book. I got to speak at a conference. Brene Brown and Jane Goodall are fellow speakers. I have arrived, right? And I've gotten a publishing contract at this point. After that, I get this online publishing for an online course. And there was a little bit of feelings that I was chasing that I wasn't aware of. And at that point, it was about wanting the approval of a certain woman archetype, which represented an older mother figure. And both my publisher and the online course partner represented that. That affected a lot of my decisions. Now, what used to be my Achilles heel, of those things of wanting approval, now I get to use what I know and that emotional intelligence to close deals. So what I want you to understand is, back to those feelings that you're chasing, is there something that feels gritty on the inside that's a wrong that you just want to right? I want to make sure that the emotion that you're putting behind those decisions are actually taking you in the right way. Because once you do wrong that right, then what? Are you going to feel good? Is that in line with your roots? Don't push for success, attract it. I believe that your personal brand is your champion, and I believe that's how we're going to change the world. When you roll up to the University of Google, I know for me, I've looked for mentors and many, when I want to be a speaker, how do I close more insurance sales? What about the saturated market of real estate? What if every one of us had a blog or an article for someone following in our footsteps? Just 2 paragraphs and some bullets. I believe that's how we could change the world, by speaking transparently to someone following in our footsteps. So your personal brand is your roots. It's your approach. You love being a student. You are an HR professional that's self-employed. I might need you. As a student, I love being a student. So what I like to do is come into your organization and learn everything about you. Learn everything about you and where you're going. And that way, the HR products that I give you protects not just today, but down the road. Lovelace. That last name and what you do is so beautiful, because it's like you're wrapping everything in my life in a beautiful lace of love to protect it. Because it is our loved ones we put in our house and into our car, into our yada-da-da-da. So your personal brand is your approach. It's about your roots. It's about the feelings you're chasing. We're all chasing feelings. RN, in the operating room, you pay attention to detail, and you got to think on your feet when it hits the fan. This is so good in whatever entrepreneurial direction you are going. And no matter what you start, you always have a personal brand. So, the elevator pitches were sharp. But think next time, maybe you don't represent the company, you represent the person who brings the service to life. So what is your approach that you picked up in your roots? And if you know you're chasing feelings, everybody else is too. And everybody wants to know what's in it for me. And your personal brand can speak to that. So I hope that my voice has fed yours. I would love to get into conversations if anybody's interested in personal brands, has questions about personal brands, wants to talk about books, courses, speaking, or none of it. Yes, ma'am.
So what is your take on if you're just terrified of your roots?
I'm terrified of my roots.
Right.
I had to change my entire talk last night because of where I'm from is on the news right now. So you pivot and take those special moments. I decided today not to stand up here and say I'm from Iran, and that's where I escaped. Instead, I decided to take that business card moment. And why I got all this business here is because I took the time and I wrote these flyers with my name and my phone number. And I said, you have 1 kid, it's this much. 2 kids, I bring a friend, it's this much. And for your pets. And I passed it out, and I had to wait 3 days. And I said, Mom, I got a weird name. No one's going to want to call this phone number with Sahara, Sarah. Like, they don't even. And the thing is, my approach to being so good with my penmanship and understanding my pricing tiers and my approach gained their trust. And I paid so much attention to that and poured myself into that because that which I was escaping. So, you with the traumatic childhood will be the most adaptable person as an entrepreneur. You with the traumatic childhood will be able to close that home for that person because you understand the safety that this brings. You with the traumatic childhood understands the emotions within people more than anyone else because we blocked and ran and had to deal with that. So you with the traumatic childhood are a better leader and have the emotional intelligence in you more than anyone else. So it's not about let me go back and focus on what was fucked up. How did that fuck up make me into who I am? I hate 4th of July because firecrackers sound like bombs. But when the bomb goes off in my office, I don't react onto my staff. I lean back and make them feel safe. I am a product of war, and that is my benefit. You remember the war you came out of and the benefit it served you. And you extend that to the people you're going to close business with. Because I bet you're going to make them feel safer than anybody else. Because you get it. You get it. You get it. Name that voice inside. Black and White Betty said, Sahar, English is your second language. You're not writing a book. And when you do, no one's going to write it. It was a yes or a no. So I said, Black and White Betty, not listening to that Black and White. Or Psychic Phyllis. It said last night, Psychic Phyllis, Sahar, you're going to come up here and you want to talk about that? Forget it. People are going to boo you, and that's it. So it's really, emotional intelligence is knowing how you talk to yourself and putting a name on it. Emotional intelligence is knowing that voice inside is the same voice that he, she is inside. So when you go to sell, to close the deal, or to get your customer's lifetime value, remember, they have the same emotions. And when you block joy, you block anger. It's not like the buffet that I'm not going to do any carbs, just the proteins. When you start blocking one emotion, you start blocking the other one. And this is important for you to know, but this is important for the other people sitting across the table from you, from your loved ones to your clients. Literally, what are they processing and going through in this negotiation? What is their value? So getting to know, we're in a relationship town, and it's more than closing the deal. It's about understanding, what are these people's triggers? Selling is an emotional process. And personal branding and sharing your thought leadership is not just the 3 best ways. It's what you're looking out for them. What happens when your house burns down? What happens when your lawyer screws you over? How do you know? People talk themselves out of lawyers so much. There's a trepidation I'm going to get screwed over, or it's going to cost too much. Can your thought leadership speak directly to that? The way you were talking to Elizabeth, I saw the groundedness and genuinity in you. I would love for that to be expressed. Anyway, what else? Yes, sir, with the sharp jacket.
You've got a phenomenal story, but we have, as a society, I believe there's a systemic issue that lies in everybody's best being on display. And so that's their brand. Their brand might not necessarily be their identity, right? You said, whatever fucked us up. Like, everybody in this room's probably got some stuff that they don't put on display, but they're dealing with it, whether it's at home or whatever. So how do you, not set this false expectation of what success looks like? Because I think a lot of people have they think success has to be like Gary Vee or 10 times and all this other stuff. What if success is just being really, really good at what you were called to do? And how do you get that into your brain so that you're not trying to seek other people? Because we have to be on social media to develop a brand, but then social media can also become equally as toxic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
how do you make yourself present but not fall the victim to trying to be somebody else that you're not?
Yeah. Two things. Gary Vee works because he's so raw and authentic, right? So it's not about being polished. You brand yourself literally. So one thing, don't talk about it as you're going through it. Hindsight's 20/20, and 20/20 is the year for that pun, right? Never talk about it while you're going through it afterwards. So I know you could go back into your treasure trove and like pull things, because authenticity comes from these raw moments. Elizabeth can fill this room every time because her interview is about, are you going to come in here and talk about falling on your face or not? And how are you going to do that? So for you and for anyone creating a personal brand, you think of yourself as a brand, right? So there's the thing that's the person. And how personal is my personal brand? What makes sense for my audience? So you tell me more about your work.
My work?
Yeah.
So my work, we help privately held business do it.
Scaling business?
Do what?
Scaling business?
Well, we do a little bit of everything. So we help raise capital, transition companies, retain top talent. So we work with a professional entrepreneur who really is more, they're not risk adverse. They want to take a risk on themselves.
Okay. So if your goal is to talk to the professional entrepreneur, then you come here and think of me as a person with a personal brand. What is the entrepreneur going to like from my personal life that we can meet in the middle? These can be books. This can be, finally that, glass of whiskey. This can be, and this is when you decide, like, what personal part of my life.
Right.
Then it comes to the next part, which is the professional part of your brand. So this is all the different content that you can begin to produce. And that professional part of the content, you better go and get those war stories from the entrepreneurs that did this and had to do this. So when you do your market research, imposter syndrome, and he did it, so this is the equation and I got to do it, no. What you can do is go into those comments and see what real people are talking about. And that's where you pull your topic and put your spin on it. So don't look at the person, look at the humans. Don't look at the public figure and the personal brand, look at the humans communicating with them, because that's where you need to talk to. Right? So it's about your approach, your roots. If you and your peers show up to the same desk with the same project, y'all are going to approach it a different way. You just are. That's your roots. That's what you've been through. Those are your filters. What else? Do we have time? One more? One more. Yes, sir.
Who has been the biggest influence in your life, and what lessons did you get from that person? What did they teach you?
I've had so many people that show me what not to do. I would have to say, when I was in New York, I remember watching a documentary about Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell really wanted to paint. But to make some money, she found a broken guitar and began to write songs and play songs. Joni Mitchell was in a time where you should definitely go and get married. And she was like, nah, I'm going to stick true to my purpose. So what I remembered for her was, like, she did a lot of these, and she kept going. What I remembered about her is she literally sang to the tune of her own drum because she had this broken guitar and she made her own tune, and it wasn't even what she wanted to do. I want to just speak and write. Personal branding is my lane of genius, and it's my songwriting, so I could pay the bills and continue to pay it forward. But this here, talking to you, inspiring you, looking at your face, understanding how I could get behind your voice, is what I live for. And that's why I do it for free once a month. And that's what she taught me, is this thing that you gotta do, but this thing that you must, that you just must. And I know you have a must, because you're reading about your must, you're making your notes about your must. But I want you to, don't wait for that to be perfect. Start to share it. Thanks, y'all. Thank you for having me. Name the voices within. And when the person across from you is not giving you what you want, Figure out what's voiced in there. Is that black and white Bob making that person think all or nothing? Is that psychic Phil telling that person the future before they give themselves a chance to be the best person for this recruiting firm, to be the best purchaser? Think about those voices, name them, and that way you don't get so wrapped up.
Thank you. You're amazing. We appreciate it.